let's say, areas. This is a webinar based on my experience from the field. I'm doing VCF projects as well, and for sure also to give you the, how can I say, the maybe optimal path to learn this topic, because VMware Cloud Foundation, it's not only one learning topic. It's consists of roughly 5 or 6 learning areas, starting with vSphere. You will see that later. Then people should know at least a bit about vSAN. This is a software-defined storage solution from VMware, and NSX as well. This is the software-defined networking part, and all 3 main pillars are combined in this stack. So let's start firstly with the agenda. I would like to start with a short overview, giving you some information about the history. It's not that important, but anyhow, if you like to read, if you like to understand what was the reason for VMware, what are the different steps, you can read that. More important is to understand the concepts and some probably new terms. And then to me personally, as an instructor, because this is in my, let's say, personal DNA, how to get there. What are the learning steps? What are the steps in the project? And this is to you, that you understand what is the way to get this private cloud stack in your environment if you are interested in. So then it's getting more technical. I would like to talk really very shortly about the architecture parts, the integration and extensibility opportunities, some use cases, how to migrate, how to create workload objects like virtual machines, like containers. Then I would like to head over shortly again to the operations part. Operations means how can we use that, which interfaces are available, and not lastly, but also very important, is how to do the life cycle management. And after that, I would like to close this webinar with a short introduction. What are the arguments? What are the, how can I say, the statements why customers did decide to go with VCF? Maybe for you, how to select the solution, which statements are necessary to convince your managers and other people and so. And then I would like to close the session with some news, mainly based on the recent executed acquisition by Broadcom. And then I would like to give you some information about training certifications, links and downloads. And I put that Q&A at the end, but anyhow, if I see some questions, and maybe I will stop in 30 minutes doing some first demonstration, and I will interrupt this webinar a few times, switching over to a different monitor to give you the practical view. How does it look like? Okay, let's start. In this webinar, I will use, hopefully I will not confuse you too much. The reason behind that, I will use to finalize this sentence, I will use 3 different environments. The reason for that is some activities are very time consuming. So I do use these 3 different environments to give you an understanding. What is the situation when you start? What is the situation shortly after deployment from the first part of the platform? And the third environment is to give you some examples for using this platform. And the second thing I I would like to mention is during the webinar, it's somewhat understandable to you, I don't know, hopefully, but I would like to give you additional informations what's next after this webinar. And if you like to deal with the technology, with the product, with some other topics of what you heard, what you learned, my recommendation is use firstly the VMware Learning Platform. I will give you later on a short introduction how to register, not exactly because it's obvious, but anyhow, what are the opportunities to use this platform? It's a free platform, free to use. It's somewhat limited because you are only able to use a specific lab up to 9.5 hours. But anyhow, it's sufficient to start with some topics. And my recommendation for you guys, if you would like to see what is VMware Cloud Foundation with your own practice ideas, use this hands-on lab, which is called 244605 HCI. And if you learned how to deal and so on, then you can build, if you are able to provide some resources, have a look to that. This is the minimal resource requirement to build the so-called VCF holodeck. The VCF holodeck is a project which has been introduced roughly 1 year ago. It's based on a former project called VCF Lab Constructor. The abbreviation is VLC. And if you download the PowerShell scripts, the PowerCLI scripts, if you download some additional resources like software images and so on, you are able to build a basic VCF environment within 1.5 hours without preparation. But as you can see in here, you need to provide a lot of resources. But you can do that with a single ESXi host, which is based on a CPU, which provides 16 cores at least, 384 gigabyte of memory, and at least 3.5 terabyte, preferably, let's say, implemented as an SSD or M2 device. However, this is my personal recommendation. Use that as a second step. And if you learn that, maybe you're interested in a POC, and then you can build your own environment with the official procedures. Holodeck is provided by VMware, but it's not the way how to implement VCF in the field. It's only an, how can I say, lab environment to create the stack as fast as possible. So, however, hopefully not too long. Let's start with the overview. VMware Cloud Foundation in different point of use is, on the first hand, a so-called automation or orchestration tool. Automation orchestration is to understand that you are able to build a vSphere vSAN NS6 environment based on standardized architecture information with a tool set, which I introduced later, which guarantees that your deployment is most likely successful. For sure, you can introduce some mistakes, something like that, but there are some validation steps in the bringer process, and it should not happen, but anyhow, it can happen theoretically. But if you compare that with the traditional processes, that means you are building your ESXi host, you are building the vCenter server, you are creating a vSAN data store with all requirements which may be which are maybe aware of, and then probably the hardest part is building the NS6 infrastructure. And some people needs for that days to weeks. With the VCF approach, you can build that environment, which I marked with my pen, in roughly 3 to 4 hours. So this makes a huge difference. And there's even more when it comes to scalability, when it comes to complex environments like multi-region, multi-site, and so on, stretched vSAN clusters, and a lot of topics which is somewhat difficult to design and to implement. Therefore, automation is to get that result in an orchestrated manner with a predictive result. So after that, you build that environment, you will use that environment, and then you can use this environment with different workload objects, like traditional virtual machines, like Kubernetes clusters for modern apps. And what's also still a hot topic is providing more security based on NSX segments, based on NSX features, based on additional policies, additional functionalities like intrusion detection and so on. And you can understand VMware Cloud Foundation as a complete HCI stack. I'm pretty sure you know the abbreviation, and this is the building block based approach from VMware to create use cases like providing workloads for specific environments like SAP, like VDI environments, like, again, as I said, traditional virtual machine deployments, but as well, if you choose to extend this platform with some VMware ARIA products, now you can provide a so-called service catalog or self-service portal to request virtual machine deployments, to do concepts, or to use concepts like infrastructure as a code. That means the virtual machine or container is described as a code file with directions to implement the virtual machine or the container, and to implement the resource usage and so on. On the other side, you have a lot of additional tools like policy management, governance, additional orchestration and extensibility areas. But what's important to understand, this is an optional part of VCF. Yeah, you will see later on, after the first step of the deployment, which is called bring up, there is no ARIA available. Yeah, you need to follow additional steps to be able to use that feature set. You will see that. So to combine, or to summarize that, at least VMware Cloud Foundation is a infrastructure platform which is built on standard procedures, which provides resource usage for different use cases, and it's your private cloud stack, in other words. And in a later slide, I will go back to these statements like scalability, performance, and so on. So don't be confused if you see some empty slides. This is to me, or for me, to react on some questions on a very soon, how can I say, way and activity. So at present, it's not necessary to do additional drawings, but I'm prepared for that. So shortly about the history of VMware Cloud Foundation. Back in 2015, VMware got the idea to build this solution based on Dell servers. and they created two different paths. The first path was evo::rec. This was the first iteration of the Cloud Foundation, but in that time it was not called Cloud Foundation. The first name was something like VMware Evo SDDC. If you are a Dell EMC customer, you know the product called VxRail, hopefully. VxRail is one of the results of this first initiative. But anyhow, VMware decided to go a bit further, combined vSAN, NSX4 vSphere. This was the former software-defined network solution from VMware, which has been deprecated 2.5 years ago. I don't know at present because it's back in the history. However, this was version 2, version 3. Anything up to here was built on a design approach called VVD. If you read some former documents, you will see probably this term, but oh, sorry, this was the last release, I missed that. But you need to be aware that this concept has been deprecated back in 2021, and this kind of was consolidated in the standard documentation set of this product called VCF. So the content, the, how can I say, informations has been, as I said, repeat that shortly, consolidated in the standard manual set, in the documentation you will find on docs.vmware.com, and it has been extended by a new approach called VMware Validated Solutions. The abbreviation is VVS. So if you deal, or if you would like to deal with this product, you should be aware of this situation. So VVD is old. Documents for a specific version for sure are most recent. For instance, if you download the most recent version called VCF 5.1, it has been released in November last year. It's based on VC8 U2, vSAN 8 U2, and the latest release of NSX. And the documentation about that, again, gives you enough information to plan, to read, how can I say, statements and directions to implement that, to troubleshoot that if necessary, and to build the solution. So anyhow, I will use in my lab environments VCF 5.0 because it's somewhat limited if you use the existing labs. So it's always a matter of time, of point in time for sure. So the next 3 lines, I don't like to read that completely. I give you only the statements about some abbreviation, what is important, and a few seconds later you will see some screenshots, and I would like to demonstrate at least what is the process to use the planning preparation workbook. It's the Excel file, the BOM, the bill of materials list. I do have a screenshot in a few seconds, and from this file, this is a very important thing, because with that we are planning our deployment. From the Excel file you must use, because without this Excel file the deployment will fail, I promise. So from that you prepare for deployment with an additional Excel file, which is called deployment parameters file. You can use Excel, or you can convert that into a JSON file. There are at least 2 options available, and this JSON file is imported in an appliance called Cloud Builder. It's a 3rd or 4th important term. This Cloud Builder is a virtual machine which can be deployed on an additional ESXi host. This additional ESXi host must not in the scope of deploying or using that in the VCF stack, therefore additional, or you can use as well a VMware workstation if you like. So it's only, how can I say, a bootstrap appliance which starts the so-called bring-up process. And the bring-up process, provides a very extensive validation. It takes at least 20 minutes to validate all prerequisites. And then this bring-up process will deploy the first vCenter server, at least 4 ESXi hosts, which are vSAN capable, vSAN ready, an NSX cluster, which consists of 3 virtual machines, and finally, an additional virtual machine called SDDC Manager. So you will see that later in some demonstration or in the architecture picture. So, and this in a real world, it's a simple deployment because it's probably not clustered. In a real world situation, needs 2, probably 3 hours. It's different because we have different speeds on storage, on networks, and so on. So the SDDC Manager, which is demonstrated later, is a user interface developed and built to manage the VCF stack. The VCF stack, again, the basis is vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. Running on these VCF stacks, or in other words, the first 4 or 8 ESXi hosts are formed in a first cluster, and this cluster builds the so-called management domain. If you are familiar with the design topics of VMware, which are available, I'm not pretty sure, I believe more than 60 years or so, you know probably the concept to provide a management domain to host on this management cluster. I can also call or use the term management cluster. The point is the management cluster ESXi hosts are used to host management systems. And the typical way to implement VCF is to add additional so-called VI, virtual infrastructure workload domains. You can have, it's a bit different related to how you log in, how you combine the vCenter servers, either up to 14 or up to 24. And I don't like to get that deep, but anyhow, I assume that all of you are familiar with the vSphere elements like vCenter server, ESXi host, and if you create that many workload domain elements, you have the opportunity to link the vCenter server instances with the feature called enhanced link mode. And this is the reason for only using up to 14 additional domains, in some 15, and you can get a single point of view for all vCenter server environments. One is management domain and the remaining are workload domains. And in the workload domains, in the workload domain clusters, in the workload domain ESXi hosts, you run your workloads like productive virtual machines, either traditional or classic or VDI environments, or maybe special purpose virtual machines for SAP or other products, and at last, sorry for that glitch, you can use as well, you can enable as well Tanzu, which is a topic I would like to demonstrate later in one of the demonstrations. So the next part is a bit more technical because we need to understand which VCF deployments are available. We can differentiate between a single site or dual site. We can add some multi-region situation with VCF and NSX Federation. This is to combine individual VCF and NSX implementation together to get at least, again, a single point of view, and in some areas additional features like multi-region segments, multi-region elements, and so on. Again, it's not the time to go that deep, but you should be aware that we have different deployments, and the easier part is to differentiate between these both architecture styles. We start with a consolidated situation. That means the first result is this so-called management domain, and then you need to decide if you like to have additional workload domain objects. You convert this consolidated architecture into a standard architecture. It's not really a difficult process. It's only consisting of, I would like to add a so-called VI workload domain. If you skip that, for sure you can run your productive virtual machine as well on the management domain ESXi. This is for small environments, maybe, I don't know, up to 200, 300 virtual machine. You can add additional ESXiOs in the first cluster. It's up to you. But the standard topology is standard. So I would like to demonstrate later the network pool, the host commissioning procedure, which is one of the benefits when it comes to VCF, because again, it's a standardized procedure, how to onboard a new ESXi, how to create this scalability, adding additional resources. And the workflow, again, is provided by the SDDC manager, and this is part of this automation engine. When it comes to storage, you need to know the terms principal storage and supplemental storage. Principal storage for the management domain is vSAN. For additional domains, you have the choice. And supplemental is you can add additional storage protocol types to the principal storage. It's depending on your storage needs, on your capacity, and so on. The lifecycle management, I give you this mentioned demonstration. And when it comes to additional operation part, I will give you the information, what is an application virtual network later. In short, it's necessary to be able to deploy VMware ARIA products, because this is the second or third part, if you like. ARIA is a kind of buzzword in the VMware ecosystem, which has been created 2.5 years ago. And the former product name was vRealize. So if you are familiar with vRealize products as well, it's an easy, or it's a simple name change for sure, with some version changes which happened over the last 2 years or so. So anyhow, it's the same principle, it's the same concept, and you have a deployment opportunity from the SDDC manager, and this is part of the operations. What the SDDC manager provides in addition is kind of password and certificate management and the enablement of, at present, one solution which is called TensorFlow vSphere, or in other words, the workload management. This workload term is different from the workload domain. Please don't become confused. It was not my invention, but anyhow, I will demonstrate that also later, and you should see what is the difference. So the next slide is, to me personally, very important, because it gives you the path how to get to a VCF implementation, or to prepare, or to learn. However, I personally did start my journey with learning, for sure, as a VMware certified trainer, you have access to some training materials, but anyhow, it's sometimes not sufficient. You need to have practice, and I had a lot of practice in the last years about VCF. I used the hands-on labs a lot, a few times the holodeck, and I created 2 years ago a physical cluster. However, it's up to you how you learn, what is your speed, and so on. If you are skilled enough, you are able to create a so-called design. This is the most time-consuming part in this VCF project. This can take days to weeks. It's depending on the size, on the amount of virtual machine, the amount of workload domains, and so on. And I provided 3 links. The first 2 links are scoped to the VMware sites, and an additional very recommended reading is to use the VxRail implementation guides for VCF. Dell EMC did write that a bit different, not that, how can I say, not really low level. It's the VMware documents are like reading a book without reading a book. You know what I mean? Because it's only, how can I say, in a sequential order providing text. The Dell EMC document is, in my eyes, much better because you get some architectural drawings and tables and so on. And I would really recommend to use that even if you don't use Dell EMC servers. It's really beneficial. Okay, so these are the links. Use it, and then if you are able, or if you are finished with the design part, you can plan using the mentioned Excel files, and then deploying the Cloud Builder appliance, preparing the hardware, which is for sure also very important. The hardware must be VMware vSAN and VCF compatible, and you will also deal with physical switches, with rack design, and so on. And the ESXi installation part is probably the easiest one because it's a simple installation without doing anything else, with the exception of implementing the requirements like enabling SSH, configuring DNS, NTP, and so on. You will see that later in the requirements for the bring up process. So, and after deploying the Cloud Builder appliance, you can import the parameter file either as Excel or JSON, and then execute the bring up. And this is the first part of the implementation, of the real implementation. So after that, again, 3 to 4 hours or 2 to 3, depending on the speed, you can first log in the SDDC manager. If you like, you can log in the vCenter server with the vSphere client, in the NE6 manager. All of these components will be deployed. And then you have some post bring up steps to do. So there's kind of wizard available. You will see that. And this wizard gives you some hints about which order you need to follow, like configuring the SDDC backups. This is for NS6 and SDDC manager. The vCenter server backup must be added on your own. It's not part of the SDDC backup configuration, unfortunately, I say. Then you configure your identity provider. The standard provider at present is the vCenter PSC. PSC stands for Platform Service Controller, which provides a so-called single sign-on solution. And I'm pretty sure if you logged in at least one time in the vSphere client, you used that before. Then you can add an online VMware Online Depot account, which is standard. If you are living in the dark side, for sure it's not possible, so you need to follow a different approach, but it's supported. There's kind of offline situation with additional helper systems you need to use, but it's not, it's out of scope for this webinar. Then you configure the password management, the certificate management for all instances. And next one is prepare ESXi host for adding a workload domain. And after that, you are able to create your personal use case. Like, I would like to use the VCF similar to a vCenter VC environment. I'm creating my virtual machines on my own. That's it. But again, this platform can provide a lot more when it comes to additional solutions like ARIA automation, busy with Tanzu, and so on. And this second post bring up is to give you the idea that you are flexible in using this platform, because this platform, it's not only about providing resources, it's a platform which provides additional value. Okay, so about the term like NSX Edge Cluster or AVNs, wait a second, you will see that. So I would like to step back to give you additional informations how to do the design process. Read the design documents. I gave you some links about that, and typically you follow a specific order. That means doing some assessments, discover requirements, collect requirements, doing some talks, some interviews with your customers, with your internal customers, and so on. And then typically a conceptual design is created, then a logical design is created. The difference is conceptually is high level. Is high level consisting or based on the requirements, some constraints, assumptions, and so on. It's the design theory provided or used by VMware processes. And then you are cycling through some tables called design decisions. And these design decisions help you to decide between, I don't know, 2 options or 4 options. And if you think about simple thing, how many physical network uplinks do you use today? And it's not fixed. In some environments you can use 2 if you have high-speed networks. In some environments you must use 4 or 8 because you are only using 10 gigabit networks. So, and these are, or this is an example for dealing with options, dealing with the so-called design decisions. And I'm not pretty sure about the exact number, but I do have in my mind roughly 400 design decisions in the design process. And if you are not able to do that on your own, I would like to give you the recommendation, talk to a VMware partner with VCF or design expertise. And if the partner doesn't have VCF expertise at present, so it's sufficient to have vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. The VCF part is not that hard, but the basic pillars, this is that what I covered or what I mentioned a few minutes ago with the part, how can I say, learning domains. And then after that, you create the physical design with the stack and you can use that. So before we do the first demonstration, I would like to give you a short drawing how a consolidated architecture looks like. And you can see in here, you start with 4 ESXi hosts. The management domain is built, additional objects for sure. You have some, you must have some physical network connectivities with the top of rack switches and so on. When it comes to a standard architecture, for sure you have, in addition to your management domain, VI workload domains, and now it becomes a bit more complex because you need to design for some failure situations, especially because you have vSAN in place. In addition, you have some additional things like vSphere HA, stretch clustering, and so on. And this information, how to deal with, again, have a look to the design documents. To me personally, it's only to give you the information, okay, and going back, consolidated is only having one domain. Standard architecture is providing more than two domains, starting always with the management domain. So again, a short step back, reminding you that there is a VMware compatibility guide with VCG. Since VCF 3, there is no dedicated VCF VCG available. That means you either using some special hardware or you are building your systems based on the systems part, which is visible here, and the vSAN part. These two parts are sufficient to select the ESXi host. Okay? And the information, again, it's here. When it comes to vSAN, for sure it's necessary. I mentioned that. I don't like to provide some vSAN deep dives, but anyhow, you should be aware that VMware released a so-called express storage architecture called ESA, which is an extension or second option when it comes to selecting the devices compared to the original storage architecture. The original storage architecture is a two-tier architecture, which is based on cache devices, capacity devices, and this is a one-tier architecture, which is only based on NVMe devices. This makes the most important difference. This is more powerful for sure, more expensive also, unfortunately, but however, you need to think about which ESXi host you would like to use, and you go typically with so-called vSAN ready nodes. It's the most convenient way to do that. Then you should know which versions will be implemented. This bill of materials list can be found in the release notes of the selected release. This is the last release. And as you can see in here, this is almost the most recent vSphere, NS6, and ARIA versions. And you see the build numbers, these release date, and so on. It should give you the necessary information for decision. So the next part in the screenshot, I use now only the screenshot, and again, as I mentioned, give you later on a short information about that. The planning parameters workbook is downloaded from the VCF documentation part. You see the source, and it's kind of tool which is used to plan your deployment. And as you can see in here, there are a lot of tabs. It's not that you must use all tabs, all configuration, but you should at least use the inputs for the management domain sizing, probably the certification generation file, and if you like to go with a consolidated architecture, you are probably finished. But anyhow, this is a tool which validates the input, which checks your planning, your resource sizes, and so on, and therefore it's for doing for planning the bring up process the most important the most important tool. So, but you need to deal with that. It's not that complicated, but anyhow, it's an, how can I say, a bit of time consuming. So the demo will happen in roughly 4 or 5 minutes. So before I providing this demo, I would like to mention the parameter guide file. The parameters file, in short, can be downloaded from the download site. The download site for VCF is, I believe, 3 or 4 objects. The largest object is the so-called Cloud Builder OVA, roughly 24, 25 gigabyte, and 2 Excel files. One is for standard deployment or non-VxRail deployment, and the second file is for VxRail deployment. And this file, again, is downloaded. You must adjust some values. The sample values probably are fine for doing some exercising, building a POC, whatever, or a lab environment. But anyhow, you should look to all values to configure IP addresses, FQDNs, and so on. Then it's important, as I mentioned before, or convert into JSON file. You can convert that with the so-called VCF SOS tool, which is available in the Cloud Builder, or sorry for that, you can use community project, or I don't know if Martin Gustafsson is working like a community guy. However, this is a website which can be used to convert an Excel file. Sorry, not to convert. This is to create a JSON file. It's not to convert. Was my bad. It's to create a JSON file with the build of some user interface elements. And then this Excel file, to mention that, is also consisting of some tabs: credential tab, host and networks, deploy parameters. Have a look to that. It's very easy if you created the planning and preparation workbook completely in terms of what you need, and then you can use that file doing the bring up. A second option, and this is sometimes necessary for doing additional IDs when it comes to stretching, when it comes to additional topics, is creating this JSON file. And this JSON file is also usable when it comes to API usage. So I say typically all, but to be honest, probably almost all activities can be done via a REST API interface, which is provided by the Cloud Builder or the SDDC Manager. And the payload part is provided with the JSON file. Maybe you know that technique. It's used in other products as well. But anyhow, this is a short example, and a lot of parts has been consolidated, however, or collapsed. You see some information about creating a network pool or creating the management domain. It's only an example, but anyhow, you need to be aware that this deployment parameter file can also be provided in a JSON format. So now it's the time to look to the chat window. No questions so far, so feel free to ask questions. And I would like to stop my presentation in a few seconds if I'm able to, and starting the sharing from my main screen. I checked that regarding resolution and so on. You should be able to see that clearly. So the first thing I would like to give you as a short live demonstration, it's not completely what I like to do because, again, it's too time consuming, but you can see in here, you can select in the management domain deployment if you like to use the so-called subscription-based licensing. And as you know, VMware by Broadcom will force you in future. You have to include that, and with that inclusion, additional fields are enabled. Or if you like to configure the VLAN things around management virtual machines and ESXi host VM kernel interface, you can include that. So what you need to do is you go through the first page, decide which part of the deployment is included or excluded. Says excluded, you get a final result, you get some inputs and so on. And then you look to the domain sizing inputs, and after enabling that, you can provide information in this Excel sheet parts. And this applies to network inputs and address inputs and so on as well. It's not that easy, to be honest, but if you have some exercise, you should be able to do that. But anyhow, read carefully. These are the information about this document usage, and read the prerequisite checklist, what you need to provide and so on. Should be able to do that. Okay. So the second Excel is this deployment parameter files. Unfortunately, there is no conversion from the workbook. I tried that to provide some migration things, but it's not that easy to understand. But anyhow, if our Excel Pro, you should be able to do that. But in some projects, it's not necessary. However, the first tab called credentials, I guess this is obvious, provides information about the default passwords, the information about the networks. As I mentioned before, this is a sample input. You must change that for your productive environment, but if you would like to use that in a, I don't know, in a specific lab environment, this should work. What's important here, that you are aware of the so-called distributed switch profiles. At present, we have 3, but in practice, you can provide a few more with the help of JSON. So if you have different configurations on your ESXi host available, like I do have 8 physical NICs, this is not the correct way to go because it's not sufficient. So this is a trigger point to use the JSON. Okay. So, but if you align to these existing profiles, maybe profile 2 with 4 uplinks and 2 distributed switches to segment between management traffic and vSAN traffic, you are fine to go. But again, as you can see in here, red colored fields must have a value. And then you get some deploy parameters, and if you have all validations successfully finished, you should be able to start the bring-up process. So the next part, I would like to give you a short idea about this bring-up process. I head over to my environment. Moment, please. I need to write my keyboard on the right place. So this is a cloud builder. Hopefully you can identify the topics. So during the deployment, you provide the passwords, typo. I don't like to demonstrate the deployment. What I like to demonstrate now is if you finish the deployment, you will get a so-called bring-up result. This bring-up result gives you kind of, how can I say, partitioned results about the bring-up tasks. This has been executed last year. And as you can see here, a lot of validations, preparation steps, and so on. And if you look to that, I guess more than 200 individual steps. And the result is an environment which is up and running and immediately ready for doing the post bring-up steps. And this is executed, I'm not pretty sure, in the lab environment, I believe in roughly 1 hour and 35 minutes. So from that, you get your VCF login. Maybe, I'm not pretty sure if this is correct, related to the VCF login, because if you log in into that, sometimes if you use the a different UI URL, you are forwarded or redirected to the SDDC manager. But I believe this should be the vCenter server. So I would like to give you now the information. What is the result of the holodeck deployment? This is based on the VMware holodeck. And secondly, if you tweak the deployment at least a bit. I mentioned a few minutes before that during the bring-up process, 4 ES6i hosts has been configured for vSAN and for other topics. And then I mentioned that there is an NS6 manager cluster. As you can see in here, it's only one instance. So the holodeck deployment tweaks that. But anyhow, in the productive situation, you will have 3 NS6 managers, definitely. One SDDC manager and one vCenter server. And now you are fine to use this environment to build your virtual machines. Again, this is the first result after bring up. Yeah. So, and I don't like to talk about VCF a lot because it's not a VCF webinar, but what's important to understand is these 4 ES6i hosts did form a vSAN cluster with enabled services you can influence. This, I make it a bit larger, I see already. Okay, should be better. Maybe it's a large solution what I use. However, this cluster is enabled for vSAN and provides some capacity. Some my bad. I would like to give would like to select the capacity. And in the lab environment, I do provide roughly 2 terabyte. And as you can see in here, this is the consumption after this deployment. And these 3 virtual machines are running on so-called nested ES6i hosts. Okay, so again, unfortunately, it's not sufficient, or it's not possible to demonstrate the complete bring-up process, but you did see the start, some informations about the preparation, about the design phase, and then you do see the result. Okay, so the next part I would like to provide is talking about the integrations. So I switched back to my slide set. Second. And if you look to the slide set, you see a lot of text, which does have some statements about integration and extensibilities. When it comes to SDDC Manager, and the reason why I'm talking about that is this webinar does have the headline multi-cloud solution. What is multi-cloud? Multi-cloud, in my understanding, is the opportunity that your on-premise installation can connect to external cloud environments. So you need to differentiate between different cloud environments. This the different cloud environment could be a public cloud like a hyperscaler, AWS, Azure, and so on, or could be a special cloud which is consisting on special hypervisors, or could be again a special cloud which is based on VMware products. It's different, and you need to think about that. It's not a complete cloud webinar, but I give you some information what can be connected for different instances. When it comes to SDDC Manager, one can use the so-called VCF Plus offering. The VCF Plus offering is a VMware Cloud service which can be used to manage, to monitor a few or a lot of VCF environments which are running on-premise, and with the addition of a so-called on-prem cloud gateway instance. So your services are running on a special VMware Cloud service, and this service is used to manage your on-premise installations. This is VCF Plus. Other integrations you can imagine is the backup integration, the IDP integration, which can be selected between AD over LDAP, Open LDAP, or lastly introduced a service called Okta. Or you can integrate with ARIA operations to collect some metrics, or you can use additional tools which are developed by your web developers. And what's necessary to know, in my eyes, that SDDC Manager provides an API as well. When it comes to vSphere, for sure, there's also a vSphere Plus offering. It's the same principle. You must have an on-prem cloud gateway. You are using a VMware Cloud service, and you can control your vSphere environment with that service. But you need to differentiate between this is for controlling the SDDC managers, and this is for controlling your vCenter servers. It's a similar concept, but not exactly the same. So hopefully you have some information about vSphere ES6 iHost integration APIs like VADP for backup or storage integrations, client plugins, and so on. This is also kind of, how can I say, fulfilling the promise that I would like to talk about integration and extensibility. And lastly, you can use automation orchestrator operations from the ARIA family as well. And for sure, APIs. Almost same applies to the NS6 Manager, but the NS6 Manager does provide some integration opportunities for third-party security. Third-party security provided by, for instance, Palo Alto or Trend Micro or others is used to do some AV scanning or other topics to provide IDP, IDS features and so on. I gave you this URL to the VCG. This is a list of compatible solutions which can be scoped in the area third-party security. And when it comes to the ARIA family, I would like to combine that. We have three main products. The first one is automation, which is used to provide a self-service portal for virtual machines and container deployment. You can use the orchestrator. This is a very old product, almost 20 years available, but still unknown for some of you, I don't know. And this orchestrator is a workflow engine able to talk to a lot of APIs. The minimal API probably is SSH. How can I say, the most complex API is using REST calls, but there is more. Again, it's not the place to talk about that. And the operations product is for doing some management, monitoring, compliance checkings, and so on. And all of these products are extensible by some third-party packages, which can be downloaded from the marketplace.cloud.vmware.com. Have a look to that. Use the links and try to understand. And the last part, which is also falling in this category, Tanzu. Tanzu, maybe you know that, is a family name consisting of roughly 20 products. What we are using here in that environment, basically, we are building some Kubernetes clusters, and you can extend that again with an VMware Cloud service called TMC. This is a transmission control, and this TMC can also connect to additional Kubernetes cluster provided by Azure or based on Azure technology or Google or AWS, whatever you like to integrate. And this is similar to the vCenter server, but focused on managing Kubernetes cluster environments. But this is, again, how can I say, a bit different. This is for sure an extensibility part, but anyhow, I will later demonstrate the usage or the how can I say, the point of view when it comes to how does the platform for modern apps looks like. Okay. So the integrations part, I'm looking to the time. Maybe I prepared a bit too much material, so I would like to skip that for now. Maybe we can go back to that later on. What's important to me at present, or at that point in time, to give you the understanding again in a combined slide, what are the use cases for VCF? And the term, what I use typically is you can build a private cloud. You can use that as a hybrid cloud solution. You can use that as a multi-cloud solution. It's up to you. And when it comes to the workload instances, as I mentioned before, at least 2 times, you are creating or using traditional virtual machines deployed on different ways, or you are using self-service virtual machines, which are typically requested with the self-service portal provided by the ARIA automation tool. But you can use whatever you like to use. When you buy a solution which is able to talk to the vCenter server and which is also a tool called self-service portal, you can use that as well. There is no need to use ARIA automation to get that, how can I say, feature set. To me personally, it's important that you distinguish between, do I'm using classic approach or do I'm using the self-service approach? When it comes to modern apps, for sure, the easiest integration is to use VCF with Tanzu, which is enabled via the SDDC manager and the VCF client. And that you can use so-called spherelets. I will show you what is a spherelet later, or you can use a so-called Kubernetes worker node or worker node cluster. And the tools, maybe you heard about kubectl and so on. And in addition, you can also provide a self-service Kubernetes opportunity. That means for your developer teams, you can say, okay, there is an interface. If you like to have Kubernetes cluster with a specific version, log in into vSphere. If you have the rights for sure, the permissions, and create a self-service Kubernetes cluster. And you can also use different ways to do that. The more specific use cases are VDI. This is provided by the solution called VMware Horizon. Maybe you are aware of that. I don't like to dig deep now, but anyhow, this is a virtual desktop infrastructure which is used to provide personal desktops. Or you use SAP, or you use on traditional virtual machines or modern apps layers, the so-called artificial intelligence or machine learning things, which is also a very hot topic. And hopefully we will see that also in, how can I say, traditional environments. I believe this is a feature which will increase in usage, but however, have a look in your own environments. I don't know if you are working as a consultant, or if you are thinking about using VCF or other VMware features in your environment as customers. So it's up to you. So however, you can add for sure additional use case. Maybe some customers are thinking about providing lab environments. I read about a use case a few months ago. Large military customers did have the need to deploy on-demand labs, on-demand application labs for specific applications from that area can also be used. So again, it's a very flexible platform to host, I repeat, virtual machines and containers. So when it comes to the VCF deployment and after bring up, after preparing for your use case, the next question arises: how can we migrate? Or do we start on a greenfield building your or our virtual machines from scratch? It's up to you. But if there is a migration necessity existing, there are a lot of opportunities available. You can do classic things like cross vCenter migrations. You can do restores from your backups. You can do some virtual machine replications, different options available for sure. And lastly, when it comes to mass migrations, I would recommend dealing with the VMware HCX product. If you buy VCF, you are allowed to use HCX. And HCX consists of an additional set of instances. They need to be planned, deployed, configured. But anyhow, the use case for using HCX is for sure you have hundreds or thousands of virtual machines you need to bring to your new platform. So now you learned, in short, for sure, the options, how you can deal with that. Again, this is migration. In opposite, you are building that from scratch, either way. Okay? So, the next part, I would like to switch back to the interface part to demonstrate that. So now I need to think about how is my order to do this demonstration, because can be sometimes confusing to use the correct order. So my second job role is kind of storytelling sometimes. So I would like to create a specific effect in your mind, in your, how can I say, in your imagination. And this specific effect is, how can I say, somewhat successful if I follow the correct order. So I did start or resume my lab environments if or when you use specific lab environments provided by VMware, either for official class. Today in the morning, there is a class mentioned called VMware Cloud Foundation Deploy Configure Manage class. This class does use a very large environment. This very large environment, give me some seconds to log in. The timeout settings are very low, so I need to log in all the time. But let's check if this login is redirected for sure. So I would like to summarize that what you saw before in my home lab, and would like to extend that point of view with the situation I did create after doing the bring up a workload domain. This workload domain consists of a new set of ESXi clusters, a new vCenter server installation. This vCenter server installation is hosted on the management domain. Again, the management domain is for providing resources, compute, storage, networking for the management systems. And in the official class, you see, okay, there's still one NSX manager, there's the first vCenter server, there's the SCDC manager, there's the workload domain, which is abbreviated with WLD01 NSX manager, and the workload domain vCenter server. And these systems, yeah, provides the feature sets to use VCF. Okay, so it's important to understand we are now in the phase we did create a standard architecture, which consists of two vCenter servers, two domains, two NSX managers, single instance, to mention that. And from the SDDC manager user interface, you see that, please, one more. Okay, so you see that here. This is the management domain. The type obviously is management, and the workload domain, the type is VI. If I look to the management domain, and the operational aspects from here is you can control that domain, that cluster, that ESXi host. You have some summary informations. You have some services like opening new browser windows to open the vCenter server, VC client for sure, the NSX manager, and so on. I would like to skip the updates for now. You have 4 ESXi hosts, which is the starting level or starting amount. Each ESXi host does have individual information for sure, capacity, and so on. There is one cluster at present. Theoretically or technically, you can add an additional VC cluster in that domain. It's not necessary in most cases, but it's possible. Okay, so, and then you have also certificate management. If you provide certification or certificate informations like CSRs to generate and to deal with the certificate authority, to download that, And lastly, you can install certificates on different instance types. Again, this is kind of value of this SDDC manager. It's for hundreds of ESXi hosts, and I can say for hundreds of clusters on one place, single point of view for the whole environment when it's based on VCF. Okay, so when it comes to creating a workload domain, would like to give you a short introduction how to deal with that. The most important part to me is to give you the information what is the process, and it's a simplified process. That means you need to provide additional ESXi hosts for sure. This infrastructure will have a name, and in the next upcoming steps, you create or you provide additional informations about the configuration of the vCenter server, related SSO, for instance, or other things. Okay. So another topic is also operational aspects when it comes to add additional ESXi hosts. So wait a second. So sometimes this is lab related. We have some, how can I say, some waiting times. Hopefully this is not that long. Maybe I need to refresh the browser window again. Yeah, this is not ideal at present, but anyhow, what I like to demonstrate is to give the impression what's necessary on host layer. Let's try a different approach, going to the host part. I guess the workload SDDC manager is present a bit slow. Let's see. Give me some seconds. Okay, it takes a bit too long for me. Don't like to waste your time. I'm heading over to the third lab environment, and to me personally, it's only to give you the imagination. What are the steps when it comes to the provisioning of additional ESXi hosts? So I see the environment is highly used, so 97% memory. That looks like a bit too much. However, I would like to give you the first step of this wizard for host commissioning. And as you can see in here, the requirements to be able to commission a new ESXi host or to execute the bring up are written here. So I give you some examples. The host must be vSAN compliant for the management domain and should be vSAN compliant if you like to use vSAN. You start with a standard switch. Your host should have recent drivers, firmware, and so on, according to the compatibility guide. What's important is if you select a specific VCF version, the ESX hosts must be prepared with this version. Yeah, another version is not accepted. This will be checked. DNS, FQDS, management IP, and so on. And if you follow this checklist, sorry, it's not difficult because it's all written here. So I don't like to commission a new ESXi host because again, it's a bit time confusing. In addition, I don't like to provide the part how to create additional workload domains, because it's also time consuming. But to give you this understanding, as I mentioned before, the SDDC manager is your management interface to do the whole deployment preparation stuff when it comes to the infrastructure platform. So there is one important exception when it comes to the NSX manager. For sure, the NSX manager will be created, will be realized, and after logging in, you see that this NSX manager is configured according your deployment parameters file. That means your fabric has been created. That means your ES6i host configuration has been set. All ES6i hosts from a management domain has been configured with a so-called NSX configuration. All four ES6i hosts are able to communicate each other. This is kind of the tunnel information and so on. And these ES6i hosts did form an NSX enabled VCF cluster. Again, this is part of the bring up process. In addition, probably in the node configuration, when it comes to management edges are so-called network service virtual machines, which are used providing services like routing, like firewalling on the gateway layer, and so on. Everything is based on a layer called transport zone. It's also automatically created. There is no need to do that on your own. And after that, you can consume that. And this is your decision how to consume that networking platform. So what you see is probably a new information, new for you guys. I don't know if one of you did use NS6 before, but however, the topology consists of important elements like NS6 segment, and NS6 segment is similar to a virtual machine port group. Then going up, a so-called tier 1 gateway. Tier 1 gateway is responsible for either providing services and controlling the so-called distributed switching, the distributed forwarding, the distributed firewalling. It's kind of, how can I say, a control virtual machine, but anyhow, it's a multiple usage. And lastly, on the other side, the so-called tier 1 gateway, which is used to do the uplinks. So we are often talking about north-south connectivity. That means in the north, there are the BGP-enabled devices, routers, and so on, connected via the top-of-rack switches. And this tier 0 gateway is implemented as a virtual routing and forwarding instance in these NSX Edge cluster virtual machines. When it comes to this NSX Edge cluster virtual machines, I give you this short idea about that. Again, need to log in, take some time. Oops, this was wrong. So now you can see, hopefully in a few seconds. Come on. So this is my personal dependency when it comes to freestyle labs. You are, how can I say, depending on that, what in the lab environment is possible or not. However, I was able finally to log in. And now you can see, and with that, I would like to close this NSX part, these two virtual machines. What you see in here, this is the first edge instance, the second edge instance, and both did form the NSX edge cluster, which is again responsible for providing kind of network services. So for the last, I guess, 10 minutes, I would like to give you some information about mentioned use cases like Tanzu. When it comes to Tanzu, this is enabled to give you this short informations via the solutions part. And you see one solution has been enabled, and the process here, if you start from scratch, you enable that solution on the SDDC manager, and then you will get a redirection to the VCF client part called workload management. And this workload management implements a so-called supervisor cluster, which is a so-called bootstrap Kubernetes cluster based on some virtual machines. You will see that in a few seconds. And then you can use this Kubernetes cluster either to deploy container apps or to deploy additional Kubernetes clusters. And this is what I like to demonstrate the next 5 to 10 minutes. It's easy if it's prepared. So the supervisor cluster is here, configured or placed in a resource pool called namespaces. This is a fixed value. And these 3 virtual machines, I'm talking about this one, 1, 2, 3. These 3 virtual machines does form the Bootstrap Kubernetes cluster. I can log in into that cluster, or I did already log in into that cluster. Now I need to think about what I like to demo. The first demo I would like to give you is to demo. Oops, my bad. I forgot the different keyboard table in that environment. So there is a YAML file available. It's very simple, called demo1.yaml. Don't like to talk about in deep about that. Give you the information how to deal with that. If you are interested, have a look to that. This is a declarative descriptive language with an desired state configuration approach. That means I would like to have a so-called service instance. I would like to deploy exactly one app, and I would like to use a container image which is called Nginx. So if you have some ideas about, or some knowledge about the terms, you can follow me. If not, please learn Kubernetes and containers. It's important. So to deploy that, it's simple. To use that file with the kubectl apply, and then you see in a few seconds, hopefully, that there is a new object or 2 new objects created. The first object which has been created is a service. The second object which is created is a so-called demo app. This is the individual name, but the general term is, this is a so-called spherelet. A spherelet is a special small footprint virtual machine running on an ESXi host directly, similar to a virtual machine side by side. And this is deployable, as you can see, via command line. That's cool. Okay, the demo app is using some services from the NSX manager. If you look to the load balancing part, so it's for sure a bit abbreviated what I do. I'm not pretty sure if the virtual servers amount is complete. I need to look to that because I remember for the IP address, however, we would find, if we look to that, that load balancer service has been realized. And this is also kind of integration. That means if you are using vSphere with Tanzu in that environment, and in that environment, you are using NSX as a network platform, as a network provider, if you like. The integration creates network services, consumes IP address, if you like, or uses so-called security groups to implement some firewall rules. So again, this is a very important part to give you the idea that VCF is the fastest platform to implement a container-based solution. So let's have a look if this amount will change. Now it's successful. I'm not pretty sure. So I guess you believe me. So the next part, I would like to start cluster deployment, which is available in that lab environment mentioned in an upcoming slide. And if you look to the directory, you see a second YAML file. If I use that, again, with the same approach, kubectl apply -f, providing that name. This is a process which takes probably 50 minutes. And you see that virtual machines now will be realized. If you look to the vSphere client, you should see that a new object type has been created called TKC02. And in that structure, there will be probably 2 virtual machines deployed. I don't know because I didn't look into that YAML file. I believe it will be a control plane node and a worker node. So this takes time because the deployment is started automatically. And this deployment, again, as I said before, will create, I would guess, 2 virtual machines. This is the first one. And if you look to the existing TKC, you see there's another control plane virtual machine. It's not visible that this is a control plane. I know that. And the second one is a first worker node. And this is to create a Kubernetes cluster. And this is a different platform to realize, to deploy container applications. And with VCF, with Tanzu, you have 2 options. Either providing the modern app into a spherelet or providing the application into how can I say, a custom or upstream Kubernetes cluster. And to give you more input, if you like to use this hands-on lab, and again, I wrote that in the slide set. This is the largest lab I saw ever. 21 modules. You learn about VCF. You can learn about NSX. You can learn about vSAN. You can learn about SADC Manager, about deploying applications, at least a bit about Kubernetes. You will need at least, I guess, 2 days to read all stuff. Have an eye on that. Almost 700 pages to read. And therefore, again, your learning journey should use this lab. Regarding my time, only 10 minutes left. I would like to close that last demonstration. Hopefully, this was not too confusing. And I would like to skip back to my slide set to give you the last informations about VCF. And I'm still looking to the chat window. If you have questions, please feel free. I'm happy to answer that. What I like to mention also, if you have questions after this webinar, Google simple for my first name, last name, Eric Popp, should not be a big deal. You will find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. I'm happy to answer your questions later and give you some direction what's probably, how can I say, advisable in your situation when it comes to doing that or that or that. So the next part I would like to skip because I demonstrated a few things already, but if you like to read that carefully and slowly, please do that. And I see that I need to skip the lifecycle management part, at least the complete thing. To mention that lifecycle management part, what's important to understand that SDDC Manager is responsible for the lifecycle management of SDDC Manager, vCenter servers, ESXi hosts, and NSX. If you start with ARIA, there is an additional lifecycle manager available. You must use this lifecycle manager. And this lifecycle manager is called Realize or ARIA Suite Lifecycle Manager. So I should have at least 1 or 2 hours more time, however, but hopefully this gives you some ideas. To summarize that, why VCF? It's a proven statement what I give you. Because I did a few VCF projects and compared that with non-VCF project, VCF is a path which is very fast when it comes to deploying using standardized procedures. For sure, you can also build a performant and secure environment with standard products, but again, it's about automation and orchestration and validation and giving, how can I say, a predictable result. And this result is scalable, SDDC Manager. This is extendable, ARIA. And in addition, I mentioned that also you can easily stretch the vSAN clusters or unstretch if you like. You can have some federation topics. You are able to implement very soon a platform for running modern apps, for running multi-cloud situation, for running additional workload topics using NVIDIA GPUs, for instance, and connecting to public or special cloud offerings. And this is maybe the most important list of statements about why customers did choose or did go with VCF. So the last slides, and is about to remind you, if you like to follow this learning journey, register for the learning platform. You see the links in the link slide. Registration is very easy. Provide your email address if you are new with that, and use it, try it. It's obvious. The holodeck toolkit, unfortunately, it was a bit too less what I like to tell you, but anyhow, the informations are on core.vmware.com. Download that, build it on your own, and as I mentioned in the beginning, this would be my recommendation to do that as a second step. So I'm not pretty sure if I should talk a lot about the news, maybe, and hopefully you are aware about the acquisition last year, executed late November. And with that acquisition by Broadcom, there is already happened a lot of, how can I say, things like licensing and portfolio simplification. If you are not aware of that, please read that. In future, you will have only access via subscription model, and there are only 2 primary offers available, like VCF Foundation and Cloud Foundation. But it's in development, it's in transition. So my goal about that is to make you aware of that you read yourself and that you understand what happens in this ecosystem. The next thing is, it's more related to my job role as a VCI. There are new product alignments available. That means each product area is led by a different business department. So I expect new business processes, and what happens in the future, it's not absolutely clear to me. But anyhow, maybe you are working on partner side, this will relates to you as well. And the last part, which is really brand new, have a read to the register, use paper, whatever. VMware partners did receive a contract cancellation notice in end of December, so they are forced to apply again. What that means, again, I'm not a VMware partner officially. I don't know. If you are a VMware partner, have a look to that. If you are a customer working close to a VMware partner, have a look to that. This will influence our business, definitely. Positive, hopefully, or negative, I don't know. So if you like to attend a class, you can do that on or with a Fastlane class, as you can see in the next slide. However, if you look to this link, you will see a PDF style web page with information about the existing classes. And what I like to recommend is definitely, before you start with VCF, check your VCF skills, your vSAN skills, and your NSX skills. These are the main skill areas, learning areas you should provide. Okay, and if you like to provide more use cases, again, ARIA, Tanzu, Kubernetes in general, container in general, and so on. The Fastlane class is already mentioned before. You can for sure certificate with some exams, you get some badges and so on, and you have some further informations about Fastlane and so on. And this is a link list, and it's not very large, but I would like to say for the first 10 minutes or for the first, I don't know, 4 weeks, this should be sufficient. And I did collect some interesting hands-on labs to give you an idea what could be beneficial. So this is the list. And lastly, I collected some materials with some very good slides, PowerPoint slides, PDF. The agenda PowerPoint is also downloadable, either looking to that QR code. You can photograph that if you like to, or you can use that Dropbox URL. The Dropbox URL, give me some seconds, I can post in the chat window as well. Second, or wait a second. With the link and providing the link. If you have access to that, hopefully you can use that, capture that in the last minute. So this is the last slide. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Was a bit, how can I say, time constrained, but anyhow, I did my very best in preparing, but I believe it was a bit too much what I prepared for. However, you should be able to see what is the reason why to choose VCF, what is the feature set, and so on. And I would like to say thank you for joining. If you have still some questions, please use the chat window. I will wait roughly up to 5 minutes. If you are interested to get some answers now or later, please contact me or contact Fastlane. And finally, again, have a good time with VCF or without VCF, with VMware or without VMware.